Igboland, also known as Southeastern Nigeria, is the indigenous homeland of the Igbo people. It is a non-governmental cultural and common linguistic region in southern Nigeria. Geographically, it is divided by the lower Niger River into two unequal sections, an eastern and a western section. It is characterized by the diverse Igbo culture and the equally diverse Igbo language. Politically, Igboland is divided into several southern Nigerian states. Culturally, it is divided into several subgroupings, including the Anyoma, Ngwa, Eda Egbabu, Izaa Ibekus, Ouhu Omuma and the Ekpai. William Balfour Beatty remarked that, in Igbo each person hails, as a sailor would say, from the particular district where he was born. But when away from home all are Igbos, and yet considerable differences exist between different parts of this extensive country, and the dialects spoken also vary greatly. Territorial boundaries. Igboland is surrounded on all sides by a host of large rivers, and other southern and central Nigeria indigenous tribes, namely Bini, Itsekiri, Ijaw, Ogoni, Igala, Tiv, Jako, Idoma and Ibibio. In the words of William B. Beatty, Igbo homeland extends east and west from the old Calabar River to the banks of the Kwara Niger River, and possesses also some territory at Aboh, an Igbo clan, to the westward of the latter stream. On the north it borders on Nigera, Igala and Akapoto, and it is separated from the sea only by petty tribes, all of which trace their origin to this great race. It is primarily situated in the lowland forest region of Nigeria, with parts in the Niger Delta, where the Niger River fans out into the Atlantic Ocean in a vast network of creeks and mangrove swamps on the Bight of Bonny. The earliest found settlements in Igboland date back to 4500 BC in the central area, from where the majority of the Igbo-speaking population is believed to have migrated. The northern Igbo kingdom of Ni, which rose around the 10th century AD, is credited with the foundation of much of Igboland's culture, customs, and religious practices. It is the oldest existing monarchy in present-day Nigeria. In southern Igboland several groups developed, of which the most notable was the Aro Confederacy. Igboland was part of the southern Nigeria Protectorate of the British Empire and was amalgamated into modern-day Nigeria in 1914. The nation gained independence in 1960. Shortly afterwards Igboland was involved in its biggest war during Biafra's movement for secession, which eventually ended in 1970 when this area rejoined Nigeria. Ancient trade routes. Igboland's culture has been shaped primarily by its rainforest climate, its ancient trade, migration, and social history within its various clans and peoples, and with its ancient trading neighbors, allies and lately with Europeans. Mr. W. B. Beatty said, "I seized the moment, and by our interpreter told Chukwuma that we had come to make his acquaintance and his friendship, and to ascertain if the people were willing to trade with us whilst signing a trade agreement with the Igbo chief, Mr. Chukwuma Obi from Aboh clan, who were one of the leading Igbo clans, engaged in early active trading with Europe. Similarly, after our salutations, I spoke of friendship, of trade, and of education, and particularly enlarged upon the evils of war, and the benefits of peace, all of which was well received," remarked William B. Beatty when signing a trade agreement with the Igbo chief, as Ibogo in Asaba on August 30, 1885. Due to the native common linguistic standard and interrelated cultures in Igboland, predating the arrival of Europeans, the lower Niger River, which divides Igboland into unequal eastern and western parts, has from ancient times continued to provide easy means of communication, trading and unity amongst the natives on both sides of the Niger River, as well as promoted ancient trade and migration of people into Igboland. and between Igboland and rest of the world. Some of the notable ancient trade and export routes in Igboland included the famous Lower Niger and Njabiagata Lake Arashi navigational routes via Saba on its Boh, and Egbuoma Awo Marigata Ogba Egboma and Oni Aboh ferry services respectively. History. Prehistory. Early settlement of Igboland dates back to 6000 BC based on early pottery work found in the Okigwe, unknown today as Orca. Some local villages retains the original name, like Umisuoka. The Black myth says Ioka, Okigwe, Amoka, Etkoka, Igwe and Suka axis. There is, however, evidence of Paleolithic man settling in southern Nigeria from at least 10,000 years ago. Much of the pottery excavated by a team led by Thurstan Shaw with the University of Nigeria at Nsukka in 1978 uncovered a rock quarry which was a mine for tool in pottery making for a stone civilization nearby at Abagua. Anthropologists at the University of Benin discovered fossils and use of monoliths dating back to 6000 BC at Ugwaluturu in the Okigwe area. Further evidence of ancient settlements were uncovered at a hypothesized Nsukka metal cultural area from 3000 BC and later settlements attributed to Ngwa culture at AD 8 to 18. Ancient history. The Nsukka-Okigwe axis forms as a basis for a proposed Proto-Igbo cultural heartland antecedent to contemporary Igbo culture. It is unclear what cultural links there are between these prehistoric artifacts and today. Later human settlement in the region may have links with other discoveries made in the wider area, particularly with the culture associated with the terracotta discoveries based at Nok, spanning a wide area about north-central Nigeria. Much of the Igbo population is believed to have migrated from a smaller area in this region, starting several independent Igbo-speaking tribes, village groups, kingdoms and states. The movements were generally broken into two trends in migration: a more northerly spread group towards the banks of the Niger and the upper quadrant of the Cross River. The other, following a southerly trail, had mostly risen from the ISU populations based nearer the axis from which the majority of southern Igbo communities were populated. Mbes are notably the best examples of an Igbo group claiming autochthony and rejecting many migratory histories about their origins. Many of these groups either way are evidently culturally northern or southern Igbo based on the proximity of their traditions to those of their neighbors and, many times, familial and political ties. Igbo UKWU and early settlements. Iranazi was digging in his compound to install a cistern in 1939 when he stumbled into the first finds of the Igbo UKWU metal and precious artifacts that led to the discovery of a larger network of linked metalworks from the 9th century. The works were based in Igbo UKWU, and further finds were found by archaeology teams led by Thurstan Shaw in 1959-60 and in 1964 in the compound of Jonah Anazi. Initially, throughout the 1960s and 1970s, it was thought that the Igbo UKWU bronze and copper items were of an external origin or were influenced by outside technology due to the technical sophistication. The opposite was revealed to be true, since local copper deposits had been exploited by the 9th century, and anthropological evidence, such as the Ichi-like scarifications on the human figures, show local origin. The works have been attributed to an isolated bronze industry which had developed without outside influence over time to reach such sophistication. Igbo trade routes of the early 2nd millennium reached the cities of of Mecca, Medina and Jeddah through a network of trade routes journeyed by middlemen. There was evidence of beads that originated in India in the 9th century Igbo UKWU burial sites. Thousands of glass beads were uncovered from the ruined remains of a nobleman's garments. The burial site was associated with the Ni kingdom, which began around the same century according to indigenous history. Ni and other migrations. The northern Igbo kingdom of Ni, rising around the 10th century based on Umanri traditions, is credited with the foundation of much of Igboland's culture, customs, and religious practices. It is the oldest existing monarchy in present-day Nigeria. It was around the mid-10th century that the divine figure Eri is said to have migrated, according to Umanri law, to the Anambra River basin, specifically at its meeting with Niger known as Ezuna Omombara near present-day Onitsha. The exact origins of Eri are unknown, and much of Ni traditions present him as a divine leader and civilizer sent from heaven to begin civilization. In contrast, Eri's origins generally suggest a northeasterly origin, which has sparked up debate pertaining to a possible Igala origin for Eri. Due to historic trade and migration of old, other people also entered the Igboland in about the 14th or 15th centuries and mixed with the natives. Towards the western end of Igboland, across the Niger River, rose a man known as Chima, who fled Benin with his accomplices after a dispute with the Oba of Benin, who consequently exiled him in the 1560s. As they left Benin City heading eastwards, Chima and his followers settled in a number of lands and established monarchies with the natives in those areas. Those grew into major village groups and towns after the 16th century. Collectively, these places are known as Chima, which translates as the children or descendants of King Chima. Igala wars and European contact. Igboland was historically known as the Ebo and Igbo country by early European explorers. Igboland was conquered by the British Empire after several decades of resistance on all fronts. Some of the most famous of the resistance include the Eku-Meku movement, the Anglo-Aro War, and the Aba women's riots, which was contributed to by women of different ethnic backgrounds in eastern Nigeria. The extreme northern parts of Igboland in the 18th were subject to much raiding by elements of the Igala people of Ida under Onaha Oboni, a descendant of one of the Ida royal families. The conflicts drew down further into areas in central northern Igboland, particularly Nsugbe near where early European settlers with Joseph Hawkins noted events from parts of the conflicts between the Ebo country and Gala in A History of a Voyage to the Coast of Africa, published in 1797. Umanri traditions state that Onaha Oboni, however, is of royal Ni stock and founded Ida as he trailed northwards. The Igala do not claim origins from Onaha Oboni of the Igbo, Eri-Chukwu and the slave trade. A number of polities rose either directly or indirectly as a result of Ni. The most powerful kingdom of these was the Aro Confederacy, which rose in the Cross River region in the 17th century and declined after British colonization in the early 20th century. The Aro state centered on Eri-Chukwu followed Ni's steady decline, basing much of its economic activities on the rising trade in slaves to Europeans by coastal African middlemen. The present site of Eri-Chukwu was originally settled by the Ibibio people under the Obong Okanita kingdom before the conquest of what became Obinkita in the 17th century by two main Igbo groups, the Izagwu clan and the Okdachi, assisted by the Ibom Isi mercenary missionaries under the leadership of the Nubi dynasty, led by Agw Nobia, the descendant of Nene Uru from Igboland. The Agw clan was centered at the capital Amanagu and were resisted by Obong Okandita, which led to the start of the Aro-Ibibio Wars. The war initially became a stalemate. Both sides arranged a marriage between the king of Obong Okandita and a woman from Amanagu. The marriage eventually failed to bring peace but played a decisive role in the war. Okdachi was led by Ndachi Ipia, who was a Dibura priest among the Edo people and was called by Agw Nobia to help in the war against the Ibibio. These groups were followed by a third non-Igbo Ekoi-cultured group, AKPA or Ibom Obruta, who were led by Akuma Nobi, the first Aro, the title of the king of the Aro. In southern Igboland, several groups developed mostly independent of NRI influence. Most of these groups followed a migration out of ISU communities in present-day Imo State, although some communities, such as the Mbes cluster of village groups, claim to be autochthonous. Colonial era following the British Parliament's abolition of the slave trade in 1830. The British Royal Navy had opened up trade with coastal towns Bonny and Opobo and further inland on the Niger with the Saba in the 1870s. The palm oil industry, the biggest export, grew large and important to the British who traded here. British arrival and trade led to increased encounters between the Igbo and other polities and ethnic groups around the Niger River and led to a deepening sense of a distinct Igbo ethnic identity. Missionaries had started arriving in the 1850s. The Igbo, at first wary of the religion, started to embrace Christianity and Western education as traditional society broke down. Christianity had played a great part in the introduction of European ideology into Igbo society and culture, oftentimes through erasure of cultural practice. Adherents to the denominations were often barred in partaking in ancient rites and traditions, and joining fraternities and secret societies were forbidden as the church grew stronger. Due to the incompatibility of the Igbo decentralized style of government and the centralized system required for British indirect rule, British colonial rule was marked with open conflicts and much tension. Under British colonial rule, the diversity within each of Nigeria's major ethnic groups slowly decreased and distinctions between the Igbo and other larger ethnic groups, such as the Hausa and the Yoruba, became sharper. British rule brought about changes in culture such as the introduction of warrant chiefs where there were no such monarchies. Nigerian independence. Following the independence of Nigeria from the United Kingdom in 1960, most of Igboland was included in its eastern region. Biafra and the Nigerian Biafran War following a coup in 1966 which saw mostly Igbo soldiers assassinating politicians from the western and northern regions of Nigeria. Johnson Aguiyi seized control of Lagos, the capital, and came into power as military head of state of Nigeria. In revolt and retaliation against the government, General Aguiyi was ambushed and assassinated by northern members of the military on the 29th of July, 1966 in a revolt against that had strong ethnic overtones. Ironsi's assassination stood out more because of the method of his killers. Ironsi had his legs tied to the back of a Land Rover and was driven around town while still attached. The eastern region formed the core of the secessionist Republic of Biafra. A regional council of the peoples of eastern Nigeria decided the region should secede as the Republic of Biafra on May 30, 1967. Nigerian General Emeka Odumegwu on this day made a declaration of independence of Biafra from Nigeria and became the head of state of the new republic. The Nigerian Civil War lasted from the 6th of July 1967 until the 15th 15th of January 1970, after which Biafra once again became part of Nigeria. The Republic of Biafra was defeated after 3 years of war by the federal government of Nigeria from 1967 to 1970 with military support from the United Kingdom, Soviet Union, the United Arab Republic, as well as with support from other states around the world. The effects of Nigerian war strategies on Biafran civilians remains a controversial topic. The movement for the sovereignty of Biafra has continued with a minority, most making up the MASSOB organization. Geography and biodiversity. Historically, Igboland has taken up a large part of southeastern Nigeria, mostly on the eastern side of the Niger River. It extends westward across the Niger to the regions of Aniocha, Ndokwa, Ukwane, and Ika in present-day Delta State, and its eastern side is terminated by the Cross River. Although micro-communities exist over on the other side of the river, its northernmost point enters the savanna climate around Nsukka. Many of the Igboid groups in rivers and delta states don't consider themselves to be Igbos. Groups like the Ikwa, Omuma, Ech and Abu people. In Nigeria today, Igboland is roughly made up of Abia, Anambra, Ebonyi, Enugu, Imo, and major parts of delta and river states. Small parts of Akwa Ibom, Benue, Cross River, Edo, and Kogi State make up the rest of Igboland. More than 30 million people inhabit Igboland, and with a population density ranging from 140 to 390 inhabitants per square kilometer, it could be the most densely populated area in Africa after the Nile Valley. Altogether, Igboland has an area of some 40,900 to 41,400 square kilometers. Bibliography. Chijera, N.K.M. Hyginus M.V. Foreign missionary background and indigenous evangelization in Igboland. Lit. Verlag Munster. p. 15. ISBN 3-8258-4964-3.